Welcome everybody. I'm Jeanne Grosset, and today we are going to have a cooking class on home remedies. Now, let me tell you a little bit about what I think of when I think of a home remedy. Many moons ago, when I first started down my natural path of healing and learning the practice of macrobiotics, I went to the Kokichi Institute and I learned how to make specific home remedies. Ones that some of you might be familiar with, some of you may not be familiar with, but things that were pretty like your straightforward, everybody who practices macrobiotic knows about them, the ume shokuzu, the sweet vegetable drink, and azuki bean tea, different kinds of remedies like that. And I'm going to talk about some of those remedies, and I'm going to show you one of those remedies, but I'm also going to kind of take you down the path of where me and my husband Patrick have gone with remedies as they've kind of evolved and become more of a, I guess what I would like to call it is a chemistry set in our kitchen that we can work with on a daily basis. So I don't look at things so much as like specific, like, oh, I need exactly that. But the first thing I take into consideration is, where am I at and what do I need? So for instance, I've had blood sugar regulation issues pretty much most of my life until I started eating a much healthier diet that was based on those 5 pillars of health. So organic, primarily plant-based, and for me, it's all plant-based for the most part. And you want stuff that's diverse, but balanced, so variety of different things from your demographics, balanced in such a way so that we create that natural healing that we would like to see. So it's not just about eating plant-based and just eating absolutely anything for natural healing. You'll get pretty far, don't get me wrong. If you go from a standard American diet over to plant-based, you're gonna get a long ways with seeing a lot of changes in your overall health if you do it with natural ingredients that are mainly whole ingredients and not a lot of that vegan processed food that's out there. Because even though that's plant-based, that's still highly processed, and highly processed foods do not heal us the same way that whole foods that are organic, plant-based, diverse, and balanced do. So one of the first home remedies I was ever exposed to and did for quite a while when I first started was sweet vegetable drink. Because when I first came to this natural healing and the rest of it, I didn't realize it at the time, but I was a sugar junkie. I was doing it with all artificial sweeteners. You know, heaven forbid, 20 years ago, you're eating any calories. And I was coming from a very highly processed diet too, so a lot of processed foods and a lot of chemicals. And I had really severe hypoglycemia, coming from a family history of a lot of diabetics. Okay, everyone just thought one day, you're heading for it, you're gonna be diagnosed with diabetes at 1.2 because here's where it is, and you're just gonna end up there. And lo and behold, haven't gotten there yet. 20 years ago, I changed my diet. And the severe hypoglycemia that I was going through, if I didn't eat every couple of hours, I would start sugar crashing, and really bad sugar crashing. Sometimes my body temperature would drop. I would start with the fluttering. I would lose my sight. It was bad hypoglycemia. I had to carry food with me all the time, thinking in that mentality back then that anything with sugar would help balance out that problem. But it didn't. The orange juice and the different things I was doing to keep that were actually part of the problem, I realized when I changed my diet. When I started eating whole grains in their whole form and those complex carbohydrates, that blood sugar regulation started to work itself out, started to heal itself. It was amazing to me how quickly I started regulating differently and how quickly those symptoms went away. I'll never forget, it was like a couple of weeks. And when I jumped into changing my diet, I did it like literally standard American diet one day, macrobiotic practice the next, because my husband was very sick. This is my first husband, not my husband today. But at that time, it was like jumping off a cliff. One extreme diet, lots of processed foods, lots of chemicals, to the next day, all natural, macrobiotically balanced, like organic, pure food. And my body, within a couple of weeks, I noticed things like, wow, I just went like 7 hours without eating, and I feel fine. As a matter of fact, I feel great. What's going on here? And then I started macrobiotics on June 26th, and I had an appointment on it was like July 10th or something. And I had a quite large cyst in my right arm that I was going to the doctor to have removed, this fatty cyst. They were going to take it out. And I remember the day before the appointment, they had called me to confirm I was going to be there. And the next thing you know it, I'm like looking at my arm going, yeah, I need to come in and get that removed. And I couldn't find it. It took me a minute, and I sat there with my fingers in my arm and found this tiny little pea-size lump in my arm, hard as a rock, but it had changed that much in just a couple of weeks. It was like, whoa, what's going on here? Well, I found out 8 months later what was going on there. My first husband, who had been diagnosed with metastasized prostate cancer, in 8 months, completely turned around his health. How did we do it? We did it with these kinds of foods. What have I learned since then? That yes, there are very specific recipes that you can follow and that you can use to get yourself off and running. But as you go and you learn more, I encourage you to make up some of your own home remedies. A home remedy can be something really specific for, oh, I'm starting to get a little bit of a sore throat or something. Or it could be something as simple as, wow, I just had a really stressful day. I need to calm down, I need to relax, and I feel so tight right now. I want to do something that has that opposite energy, that yin, more relaxed energy, to change my energy. So my hypoglycemia was also healed with this lovely dish that we're going to put together real quick, which is called a sweet vegetable drink. So for those of you who are new to learning about natural healing through food and the principles of macrobiotics, this comes from the world of macrobiotics, and it is one of those dishes that is very popular in natural healing because it really helps with the nurturing of the energy of the stomach, spleen, pancreas, kidneys too. It kind of helps the whole body. But overall, it's designed with sweet vegetables to help get the blood sugar regulation back into balance. And it has another lovely effect of what it does on the body, and that is it helps the body to also kind of cleanse itself, get rid of saturated fat deposits. It helps to relax things so the body can kind of slough off the junk and release things and get rid of it. Now, when we make a sweet vegetable drink, we want to cut things as thin as possible. I could take a chunk of, this is a carnival squash similar to a kabocha squash. This is from my actual garden. Isn't it pretty? And I'm just going to want to cut this as thin as possible. I could also take this and I could use a shredder. If you want to get something nice and thin and you're just not super comfortable getting a nice thin slice with your knife, you could very simply just go ahead and take a shredder and put it on the smaller shredder settings. That's one thing about cheese shredders for those of us who change from a standard American diet over to a natural healing kitchen. We're just still going to use our cheese shredders. We're just going to use them for hard vegetables now. It's a great way to get something really thinly cut and into a salad real quickly. So just a thin cut overall. I really want this to kind of, the veggies to break down in here. Now, people always ask me, well, what's in the recipe? How much? Equal parts of these 5 vegetables is about right. But if I have a little more than one or a little more than another, that's fine too. This is not baking. In baking, it's really important to have specific measurements because we want things to rise, hold, you know, it's a whole another world, baking. It's for very type A personalities and very specific. But when it comes to intuitive and healing cooking, the recipe is more of a, how are you feeling? Here's the base idea of what we're doing. Now, go ahead and put it together. Maybe I'm putting this together. I'm not measuring the amounts, and I need a little bit more cabbage. A little more of that cooling element. I might intuitively just throw a little bit of extra cabbage in that pot doing it on my own, where if I measured it all out, I might not have done that. So I'm always one to promote the creativity of what is happening intuitively in your kitchen. Because one thing I noticed was when I was following all the recipes and doing everything very, very specifically, it worked, 100%, it worked. And it worked beautifully. My husband turned around metastasized prostate cancer in 8 months. It was absolutely miraculous and amazing. But it was also still kind of rigid, and it was hard to adapt to something that was so specific. And the reason why it was so specific was because at the time, I was told I had to do it exactly right or it wouldn't work. And you know what I've come to realize over the last 20 years? It's not necessarily true. When it comes to these kinds of dishes where it's vegetables and stuff involved, like I said, if you put a little extra squash in something, it's not going to ruin the dish or change overall if it's going to heal you or not. It's just going to give you a little bit different balance of the dish, and maybe you need a little bit more squash that day. So in this dish, I do this with a lot of my cooking too, like this ear of corn. This is how much corn I'm going to put into this dish, because that is how much corn is on this ear of corn. Now, we don't throw anything away. We save all of our parts and do things with them. So these ears of corn are a great way to, make your own stock with your onion skins and other little bits and pieces you might not be using. A delicious stock is a very grounding energy that you can make your soups with. You can use it as a base of grains. The only thing I don't recommend putting into stocks out of all your little scraps and stuff is your greens. Greens kind of just don't work as well in the stock. You want a stock that you can longer cook. And a longer cook during the summer might be like 2 hours. And during the winter it might be 6 or 4, depending on how deep and rich you want that to go. So far I have in my pot here, I have the squash, I have some cabbage, and I have some corn. There are 2 more sweet vegetables that we're going to use for this dish. Now, all sweet vegetables not only help with the body and blood sugar regulation, but they also help us to relax. Now, being stuck with the epidemic, and it's stressful to go out, and all the different things that are going on in our world right now, this is one of those dishes that you can make it. You can make like 5 portions at a time. And I'll be honest with you, my pot here is getting a little small on me real quick. I'm upgrading my pot to a bigger one. I must need sweet vegetable drink because I'm making a decent sized pot of it. But most of the time when you make sweet vegetable drink, in all of the regular recipes, what you'll see is 5 cups of water to a 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup of vegetables. And they'll cook it, and then they'll get rid of the vegetables. And instead of the veggies, they'll take the veggies out and just drink it without the veggies. Now, I'm going to be real honest with you right now. I leave the veggies in it. It's part of the whole food. And I tend to leave it in there for the most part, or if I do take it out, I use those veggies just in something else. That waste not, want not, right? Putting some carrot in here too. You can give that one a little bit more. And I just use the finest part of the shredder for this. You guys will notice I'm using a pastry cutter. It's kind of like a dustpan to kind of pick things up quick and keep them moving. over the years, when you're cooking for 100 people at a time, you learn lots of little quick ways of saving yourself some time and energy so that you can do these things a little more efficiently. And I just discovered the pastry cutter in the back of my drawer one day and went, oh, you know what? This actually would work pretty well for picking up all these little veggie pieces all the time. So right now I'm adding about 10 cups of water. I went with a little bit more, almost closer to a cup of each veg, or 3/4 of a cup on some. I'm just adding a bunch of water, okay? I got a decent amount of veggies in here. It's going to be good no matter how I do it. These veggies are going to go on the stove. I'm just going to bring that up to boil over a high flame. Now, here's another thing, too, that we can do to help relax, okay? I like to think of really healthy desserts as home remedies for relaxing. Happy hour is really popular because during the day, people get stressed out by their work, stressed out by other people, stressed out by traffic, stressed out, and they get more and more tight and more contracted. When we are like this, we crave sweetness, we crave release. The body wants the balance between the two extremes. It doesn't want to be too tight, and it doesn't want to be too extremely loose. It wants the balance in between. That's where health exists. So when we're feeling too tight, the alcohol might relax us quickly, but it's an extreme that is going to swing us right back in the other direction, and we are very likely to then crave its opposite: salt, meat, baked goods, anything that will contract us back up, because it's an extreme. So there's this favorite balance chart that I love that is in from the Self-Healing Cookbook by Christina Turner, Christina with a K. In the Self-Healing Cookbook, there's a balance chart that when I saw it, I was like, whoa, this is how it works. So simply, because I had read so many of the, I like to call them the bigger mind books about the complementary opposing forces of nature and how that transition of energy affects. And some of those paragraphs took me a couple times to read before they would actually sink into my brain. But then after all of this philosophy, I opened this beautiful book, and she's got all these cool little diagrams and drawings, and this balance chart made the overall balance of health and the overall balance of yin and yang, and how energy plays out the balance in natural healing in your food in one little chart, and it all clicked for me. And it's a really simple concept. I can draw it for you guys here. As a matter of fact, I love drawing this. I don't know how close up Patrick can get this, but let's see how good he is with that Zoom stuff. So overall balance, okay? We have, as we call it in the Chinese medicine world, we have yin and yang. But in other Oriental practices, yin and yang are actually the opposite of each other energetically. So I like to talk about them as expansive and contractive energy. So one energy is going out in all directions. That's our expansive energy. And the other energy is contractive energy that is moving towards center. When we start looking at the energy of food and start understanding it, we can turn any food into a home remedy, because we can use it to pull us back towards that center, which is where health exists. So what we see when we see that symbol of yin and yang is really a dance between two energies, and they want to be in balance with each other. That's where health, harmony, joy, all of that is in balance. Now, in the extreme world of foods, your more extreme expansion are those more stimulating foods. So we see over here all of your refined sugars and stimulants. And there's spices and things like that in this category too, but that's why we use a little bit here and a little bit there. But we also see over here like prescriptive drugs and alcohol and heavy stimulants. until we get to about tropical fruits. Here. Dairy is another big sugar category that's over here. And yes, dairy, cows, lactose, anything ending in O-S-E is a sugar. And it's made for baby cows, not humans. That's why it creates so many problems with so many of us. Dairy is a good one to avoid for a healing diet. So all these heavy stimulants and stuff over here, extreme foods. On occasion, we can maintain health with extremes, but not all the time. And the standard American diet is filled with all the time extremes. On the other end of the scale, the other end of extreme is going to be your contractive force. And over here we see things like, at your most extreme in the animal foods, eggs, then chicken. We see beef and pork. Fish being the one that's still encompassed in a healing diet out of all of the healing foods. In the practice of macrobiotics, we do occasionally use fish. Some people a couple times a week. You really want to look for fish though if you're going to use them for unpolluted waters and not farmed. Crazy fish swim in circles all the time. So in this realm here of healing, what we see are whole grains, all different kinds, in their whole form. We see beans, nuts, seeds, legumes, all the different veggie world above, below, and sea vegetables. And what I'm telling you is I consider this entire category of natural foods a category of home remedies. Your zucchini bean and squash dishes, that's a home remedy. It helps the kidneys. It's good for blood sugar regulation. It helps with focus. All natural foods in my book really end up being a home remedy, especially when you set the intention. What do I need? What am I going to go into the kitchen and make? What do I have available to do it? So yesterday in kids camp, we made one of a baked stuffed apple. Now apples, again, are natural sweet, very good to help us relax, okay? If you're craving sugar, eat an apple. It will get rid of that craving because you're actually giving the body a natural sweet. You're giving it what it's asking for. You know, candy bar won't do that. Later you'll crave something else. Those refined sugars, you've got to be really careful with those. So this baked apple here, we just stuffed it with some dates we chopped up, mashed them in with some pecans and some almonds and I think some sesame seeds. I had a bunch of roasted nuts. We just put it all together. We cored out the center of the apple and then we stuffed it. So now we have this lovely little warm apple here. And we don't like to waste anything. Look at this. I cooked the apple. In the bottom of the pan, there was a little bit of water when I put it in the oven and I baked it at 350 for about a half hour. This down here in the bottom of the pan, we're going to use that too. We're going to just take a little bit of water and add that to the bottom of the pan. It'll also make this pan a lot easier to clean. I'm going to put that over a high flame. My sweet vegetable drink here was not on for whatever reason. My back burner was popped. Now I know. Okay, so I've got my little apple in the dish here. I'm going to warm this up. I'm then going to make this dessert, which is already really nice and healthy. I'm going to add some kuzu to it. This is a great way to get your minerals. And kuzu is a giant root, and this is a root starch. So we can use this instead of using cornstarch to thicken things. And the benefit of this is when we have the kuzu added to something like this, we're adding more minerals to this dish. It's going to make it even more calming. It's also going to add those minerals to it. And a lot of us these days, especially if we're coming from a standard American diet, could really use a good reload on some good minerals. Because a lot of us have probably, if we're coming from a standard American diet, we haven't really had a good source of minerals in our diet in quite some time that comes from a natural source. The standard American diet, a lot of the minerals, a lot of that good vitality and all those processed foods, we lose so much in the processing and in the storing, the manufacturing of these foods. So when you think of healing foods, what you want to think about is the closer I stay to nature, the more of a healing quality it's going to have for me. And sometimes, we take those things straight from the garden and we cook them for a long time, which, yes, I'm still processing it, but it's not a production process. It's not a mass production. It's not me making a batch for 20,000 batches in a huge stainless steel vat that's all computerized. It's a very different energy coming from manufacturing and production than there is from someone with loving intention cooking for you. Now, I have a white dish with white kuzu in it, so it's a little hard to see here. But I have set the kuzu in here. I'm just going to dilute the kuzu with room temperature water. Always dilute your kuzu first before you add it to anything hot, because it will clump and gel. You'll do it once or twice and then go, oh yeah, I'm never going to forget doing that again, because getting those lumps out sometimes can be really hard. But I will tell you, if you do goof, just take a whisk to it and just give it a good beating, and you can get the lumps out if you go at it. So while I am stirring, I am adding this to the hot liquid, and you'll notice as I'm stirring, this is going to change color. It's going to go from being whiter and lighter to darker. The kuzu is going to gel basically with the high heat. It's going to start to gel. I lost my burner again. Here we go. I'm looking for that color shift. Okay, there it goes. Now it's getting hot enough. So with kuzu, we want to see a color shift. It's not something that we would add to something unless we're cooking it. There is a famous macrobiotic home remedy called the umesho kuzu that we would want to do the same thing with this. See here around the edges, the color is shifting. See the bubbles? Can you guys see that? Okay. That's what I want to see. I want to see that shift in color. I'm going to see that same shift in color with an umesho kuzu, and you're just stirring it frequently so that, look at that now. Now it's glossy like a glaze, okay? So we can use kuzu with pretty much any liquid you have left over from something. Okay, sometimes you've cooked beans and you have leftover liquid. You could make a bean gravy to go over a grain or some other kind of dish. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just take some of that nice glaze now that we just thickened with the kuzu, and I'm going to call this a home remedy for stress, because that's what it's going to do for you. It's going to help relax you. It's going to sweeten you up. I remember a class a long time ago with Lucci, who was one of my favorite teachers. And she said, whenever I sit down to something very important, I give everyone at the table something sweet first so that I can sweeten them up. So there's another way to use a home remedy, right? Now, my sweet vegetable drink is still thinking about coming to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, all I'm going to do is turn it down to low, cover it, let it simmer for 15 to 20 minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of different remedies, because I've got a whole bunch of different stuff here that is kind of like what Gabriella talked about the other day in her class. This is my toolkit. Like, what do I have in my cupboards at any point in time, so that if tomorrow one of my family members says to me, this hurts, or that doesn't feel good, or ooh, that just bit me, I've got my toolbox. So, starting off in the area of those sea vegetables. We need sea vegetables for healing. We really do. And you can take it in the supplement form too. There's certain supplements that are straight up seaweed. There's one called Monoflan, and it's kombu pulverized in a capsule. If you're having a hard time getting your seaweeds, then I always suggest to people use a little bit of it here and there in things where you can hide it from yourself. You don't need to eat a lot of seaweed to get the benefits. A matter of fact, if you eat a lot of seaweed, you're just going to urinate out most of the excess minerals in that. So eating a little bit at a time throughout the day, throughout the week, that's what we really need. So I suggest to people miso soup for breakfast, a little bit of your wakame in there. Throughout the day, make sure that you have a dish somewhere that has arame or nori or dulse. And I love using, I have this brand I really like too, found this in San Diego. They have dulse flakes, wakame flakes, nori flakes. Hey, it's so easy. Shake it on a salad, shake it into a soup, wherever you want to stick a little bit of seaweed. That little bit of minerals all the time, here and there, helps to rejuvenate. I've got some really crazy long hair, and it's super, super thick. I'm 54 years old, and I was told, well, when you go into menopause, your hair is going to get really thin, you know, different things are going to happen. I am very fortunate to say a lot of those things I'm not having to deal with. I am getting my minerals every day. I am eating whole grains and an array of vegetables. I believe that that is helping keep a lot of those symptoms and conditions away from my daily life, and I really appreciate that. And we'll continue to do my sea vegetables and the rest of it, because I have a lot of friends who are suffering, who I went to high school with and things like that, with hot flashes, restless nights, horrible other issues that are all coming from this hormonal imbalance. And we want to remember that hormones are liquid minerals. If you don't have good minerals, if you're not eating them, at some point, where are you going to get those minerals from? Every cell of you at one point was your food. Every cell of you moving forward is always going to be, at one point, having been your food. So we need to consume those healthy minerals on some basis to keep us grounded, to help build the foundation of that diet. So sea vegetables are really important. And you can take nori like this and just eat half a sheet a day to help you get that full mineral spectrum that the body understands, and it's designed by nature, and it hasn't been taken apart and you're taking a supplement for calcium and a supplement for potassium and a supplement for magnesium, or a spectrum that doesn't exist in nature, but it exists here. And your body understands that naturally. It's the way we're hot-wired. It's the way humans are designed. Our bodies understand natural food. Now, we can take nori and put that in something, add extra minerals. Think of seaweeds as something that you're going to put into something else also to help you do this. Relax. Stay grounded. And very well supported, grounded. There are, in the ocean, all of these different kinds of seaweeds that are grounded to the ocean floor. Kombu gets up to, on average, 1,500 feet tall. It's one of the tallest plants on the planet because it's flexible. It goes with the flow. Yep, you have a question?
Should we toast the nori or straight up is good enough?
Okay, so I like to buy my nori raw and then toast it, but sometimes I also eat it raw. Good both ways. It's a little easier to digest for people if it's toasted. Every time we cook something, toast it, steam it, whatever, we can get easier to digest. But I used to, and I'll be honest with you, I used to not like any of the seaweeds. When I first came into natural healing eating, the seaweeds were, for me, were viciously like, oh, I couldn't stand it, and I was very dramatic. I just didn't know if I was going to make it with having to eat the seaweeds. But the amount of seaweeds that were in those recipes was a lot. A quarter cup of arame, you add water to it, now you have like sometimes 2 cups of arame. Nobody needs to try and choke down that much arame. a little bit here and there. That's how I learned to get the sea vegetables, and man, they are so important. So toss them in wherever you can. Arame, this is an easy one. Arame is a very dark seaweed. The darker the seaweed is, the more mineral concentration it has, the deeper in the ocean it came from. Hiziki is like the, grand poobah of them all with the highest mineral concentrations. Arame comes next. Now people will ask me, but this comes from the Asian waters and there's Fukushima and there's this and there's that. I decided to run my own test a few years ago. When Fukushima and all of that happened, Patrick and I were like, what are we going to do? We get, shipments of seaweed from Japan. It's the best seaweed there is. What are we going to do with that? Do we just stop getting it? And a friend of ours, who's also a big holistic foodie, said, I just got a new Geiger counter. Would you like my old one? And we went, sure. And then it dawned on us, hey, let's do our little own experiment here. We ordered a package of seaweed from Japan. It came. We sat the box down on the counter. Beep, 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 beep. The levels were hot. I looked at Patrick and like, uh-oh, this doesn't look good so far. And we thought, forget it. Let's just take it out of the box and keep going. Open the box up, outside of the package, still hot. Take the seaweed out of the package, put it into a bowl, moved all the packaging away from it, put the Geiger counter over the top of it. Nothing. Now, energetically, seaweed is more contractive force, and it's high in minerals. Minerals don't absorb radiation. They're kind of like its polar opposite. Radiation's over here. It's very high, stimulating outward energy and very, very active. So they're kind of like opposites. So to counterbalance radiation, again, use your sea vegetables. Now, this here is another kind of seaweed too. Here's your kombu sticks. Put those in your grains and your beans when you go to cook them. It will help with digestibility. And then other kinds of, oh, and another thing you can do with your sea vegetables too, a lot of people don't think about this. Make teas with them. You have a little bit of seaweed left at the bottom of a jar, the dust or whatever, make some tea with it. Kombu tea is incredibly relaxing, loaded with minerals. Really helps kind of clear up the head, I think, sometimes when the head's all chattery and everything. I do kombu tea and it pulls that energy down. So I become nice and grounded and I feel very much like, okay, now I can do it. So you can make teas with them. And you would just use, a small amount and make a pot, however much you want, intuitively. You don't need a lot of seaweed to get the effect you need. You don't need to fill the pot with seaweed. When I make kombu tea, I'll typically use one of the sticks and do a big pot of it, a big pot, so that it's sitting out on the counter and the whole family can have some of it. Because usually if there's one person stressed in a household, the rest of us are infected in some way. Now, this is our little tiny jar of Kokichi tea. Can you tell how much I like my Kokichi tea? It's my favorite. Kokichi tea is a natural astringent. Okay, you want beautiful skin. You want to clean up and help that liver along. It's a natural astringent. It's also alkalizing when we drink it. It's also very strengthening. This is the branches of the green tea plant. So the green tea, the leaves are more stimulating, more yin, more expansive energy, where these are the branches and they're more strong. They're holding the plant up. They have a different kind of integrity than the green tea does. Different part of the plant. Both good. Both have a green tea caffeine. And not all caffeines are considered equal at all. There's caffeines that are not good for you, but these are natural caffeines that are actually beneficial. So green tea, Kokichi tea, both good to have. You can have them on a daily basis. I just don't suggest having them too close to bedtime because they will be stimulating. Now, I have known a few people, and here's just a little word of warning. Some people will love Kokichi tea so much that they will drink Kokichi tea all day long, every day, and when the body doesn't need to clean anymore, they'll start getting dry skin and dry eyes and start drying up a bit because it's an astringent. So moderation is always key. You know, a cup of Kokichi a day probably would never be a problem. But drinking it all day long, every day, a long period of time, at a certain point, if you're caught up with your cleaning, you probably don't need as much. So again, use the intuition. When do I need to clean up things, move things? In home remedies, I look at greens juice made with vegetables, using a sour green apple if you want variety, but that's the only kind of fruit I would use, or a lemon. Green apple and lemon, although lemon is a citrus, it is alkaline when we consume and the body does its thing with it. The liver loves lemon. The liver also loves the green apple, the sour one. So in juicing, it's like the liver forgives you. It lets you juice the sour green apple. It lets you juice a lemon. But all other fruit, if you juice it, the liver goes, wow, that's a lot of sugar. Where'd the fiber go? I'm going to treat that just like a refined sugar, because juice is fruit without fiber. And fruit without fiber, the liver just gets all in a tizzy about. So really healthy, if you want to be healthy with fruit, we want to keep fruit and fiber together. And if you want to drink fruit, make a smoothie. So more things that a lot of you might have in your cupboard, others may not. When it comes to, we can use sweeteners in some home remedies. I would suggest brown rice syrup or barley malt. We can do a Kokichi tea, and maybe someone is transitioning off of, coffee with a lot of sweetener and stuff in it, or creamers. Kokichi tea with a little bit of brown rice syrup, and it can be really nice. Give you that same similar buzz to a coffee because of the caffeine in it, but this will help to transition you over until maybe your palate just doesn't need the sweetness anymore. Because one thing that we want to remember when we're natural healing is this. When you first start out, your taste buds are going to do some serious changing. Usually within the first 72 hours to a week. If a person has made extreme changes from a standard American diet, full of processed foods, sweeteners, all different kinds of things like that, animal products and the rest of it, to a natural, whole, plant-based diet, within the first 3 days to 7 days, that same dish that a week ago tasted bland and boring, that same dish now has flavor. And what has happened is your taste buds have rejuvenated themselves. It takes about 72 hours. So if you first start off and you're just learning how to cook a whole grain, it's brown rice, it's your first time, and you taste the brown rice and you're like, wow, this has no flavor. Give it a chance. In a week, 2 weeks, a month, as the body heals itself, that simple brown rice will get more and more flavorful. And I've been at this now for over 20 years, and I now prefer plain brown rice, straight out of the pot, nothing on it. It's one of my favorite dishes because I can taste it. And when I started, trust me, I was a sugar junkie. I did it with all no-calorie sugars, but my taste buds, I couldn't taste a lot of things. The greens were bitter. Oh, now I love my greens. Can't get enough greens, want more greens. But it takes a little time for the body to adjust, shift, and change. All of these foods we talked about, all of these are prebiotic foods. Grains, beans, nuts, seeds, vegetables, these are prebiotics that our body can build its own probiotics. But probiotics, again, are another medicinal food that we can use, like that miso soup we used for breakfast, like the umeboshi plums that we had at Tomoko show us a number of dishes, how to make those, how to make the umeboshi plums themselves. These fermented foods are very beneficial, especially for those of us who are coming from a more standard American diet, who have undermined our digestion over the years, maybe done too many antibiotics or consumed too many antibiotics in your animal products that you don't realize you're getting. And we end up with, and I was one of them, things like gluten intolerances, lactose intolerances, digestive disorders of all different kinds. And at the root of that, what is the problem? The biome needs better bacteria. And with food, like umeboshi plums and miso, these different foods, we can help repropagate that biome naturally and do it with delicious foods instead of spending a fortune on probiotics and other things. Now, some of us still need help with some of the natural probiotics at the same time as their food if they want to move along faster. But then you work with a holistic doctor or a macrobiotic counselor who can help you get there with a more specific regimen of direction for your specific condition. But just remember, we're all different. A prime example of we're all different is me and my husband. My husband can consume 5 times the amount I do and lose weight. How is that possible? It seems so not fair, but he has a faster metabolism, he's constantly moving, and he's always on his feet. So he's burning, and it's his type too. He has a very fast metabolism. I do not. My metabolism is more slow. It's taking its own time. I'm doing other things in my daily practice to help me move things along. I'm moving Jeanne so that Jeanne keeps moving. And we're all different. In my diet, I need more greens. And he needs more of the heartier foods like the complex carbohydrates. He can put away whole grains like you've never seen, where I'm in menopause. I eat a lot of whole grains and I will thicken around the middle like there's no tomorrow. I need more vegetables. I need more beans and less complex carbohydrates. I don't want to get rid of them. I want to have great hair, skin, tissues, organs, and all the rest of it. Need those complex carbohydrates, those foundational building blocks. But I don't need as much because menopause, I like to look at it as my body has become more efficient. It doesn't need as much. And you gotta keep it moving as much as you want it. You want to slow it down, find a different workout. At this age, I'm doing more yoga. I'm doing more relaxing things. I'm not doing my kickboxing and stuff that I did for a long time when I was younger. Although I do admit, I do still like to punch things on occasion. I find it a great stress release. So I still have my bag. It's still around. But what I'm encouraging you is take all these different ingredients and create some of your own home remedies. If we want to create and give ourselves more minerals, more foundation, we have all the sea vegetables, we have the kudzus. We can even, just take kuzu and thicken something, make a nice gravy out of it. We also have up here a couple more things I wanted to point out. Kombu Tea is another thing that's really quite incredible if you're not familiar with it. It's 16 traditional Chinese healing herbs that are all together, and it was actually formulated by Mr. George Osawa himself. So the father of macrobiotics actually did this initial design. It is to increase strength and vitality. So if you're finding you're a little tired, your adrenals are a little bit lagging, this kind of thing, or you have that lower back pain that makes you want to kind of roll your shoulders forward, the kidneys are feeling a little weak, that Kombu Tea is really good for that. It's also good for the liver, and quite honestly, the way Kombu Tea is designed, it's good for all the human beings. Another one that is fun to have in the cupboard and exceptional for lung issues, so I call this my COVID compliant part of my toolkit. This is Lotus Root Tea. We also like to take this Lotus Root powder, is what it is. We make Lotus Root Tea with it. But this Lotus Root powder, Patrick has made many different kinds of desserts with it. Puts it into like puddings, different things like that. So it's it's got a little bit of almost kind of like, it kind of reminds me almost like a white chocolatey kind of a flavor to it. Other things you can add and make into home remedies, let's say you're making soup. And Patrick, if you could grab them for me really quick, the mushrooms that we showed, the reishi and the turkey tail. You can add into congis, soups, gravies, wherever you want to, really. Mushrooms are magical, okay? Now, I'm not talking those kind, but I'm talking the magical kind here for healing. These have become very popular in recent years, turkey tail and reishi. This is a maitake, another one.
There's no more reishi.
There's no more reishi. Maitake here. These are in the powdered form. Now, the majority of the time that we use mushrooms, we cook with them. We use them in the fresh or the dried form. But again, I have these in my toolbox, in my cupboard, for my alchemy set, for my food creations. It's part of my chemistry set for, am I tired? Am I exhausted? Do I need to boost my immune system? Am I going to be out in public these days? And I need to boost my immune system. Do I have to travel? Do I need to boost my immune system? You can put these in the powdered form into gravies, sauces, soups, the rest of it, and you just boosted it with these magical mushrooms. These are some of Gordon Sachs's favorite things to play with. He loves talking about mushrooms, and he did in his class previously in the week too. You should check that out. Another thing I want to show you is I am right now in the process. We had the last corn of the season.